Okay, we're with Wally and Ruth Cowan, both born in 1924, both in New Jersey. Wally, you were born in Hoboken and Ruth, Union City. Ruth, let's start with you. What do you remember when you were just a little girl in Union City?
Not too much, really. There's nothing that I could even say. I mean, I just know what I looked like from pictures, that's about it.
So did the two of you meet as young kids?
How old are young kids?
Well, when did you meet?
We met in Hebrew school. And I was, at the time, I guess, 10, about the same.
So you
we
guys
went to
have known
Hebrew
each
school.
other a while then?
You might say.
Yeah, yeah. And what did your folks do for a living, Ruth?
My father was a builder, and mostly repair work. So he started working when he was 11 years old. And he learned carpentry and everything else, and then went to work in New York for a company called I.B. Miller Construction, which was one of the first Jewish construction companies in the United States. This is my mother's uncle. And so he learned more there. And then after a while, he started his own business, and he was doing repair work for buildings in New York, like 16 Court Street in New York City was a building that he kept in good shape.
Wow.
That was really one of his main clients, but he did a lot of repair work without having any education at all. I think he went to 3rd grade, maybe.
Now, you know, this is, you guys were born both in 1924, right around the Depression. Do you know how it affected your families?
Yeah. I know because it was 1931. And my family, my father had built some buildings right in Union City, actually houses, and we lived in one of those. And during that time, we had to leave and rent someplace up a little north in another town called North Bergen. That I remember, that impacted me because I knew I was going to a different school. But my parents were, you know, they never said, listen, we're poor or anything of that sort. My brother was probably impacted the worst because he wanted to go to college. And my parents said to him, you know, we really can't, my father said, I really can't afford it. But he went, and he did a lot of work on the side, and took jobs as waiters, stuff like that, and he actually went through one. And I do have a letter that he wrote to my father, asking my father for some money. It was toward the last year of his college. And I have a letter which my father wrote back saying, Dear Sonny, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I don't have any money for you.
Oh, boy.
So I have that. That's what I know.
Yeah, yeah. Wally, do you know how the Depression might have affected your family? What did your dad do for a living?
My dad had a store in Hoboken, and he was an electric contractor. He wired houses, and I guess he had whatever licenses he needed for that profession and job.
They also were a licensed Lionel train.
Oh, he had a shop in Hoboken, 201 Washington Street.
But it was important with the Lionel trains because they were an agent for
Yeah.
Lionel trains.
Yeah, yeah.
It was very important. People, the month of December
Yeah.
was focused on the store, and I was helping out from a pretty young age. I would spend time in the store waiting on customers, smiling and doing whatever a good boy should do.
I like that. Ruth, tell me about your grandparents on your dad's side.
On my dad's side, my father lost his mother. He was less than 3 years old.
Mm.
And his father remarried. And he had this little, the 3-year-old boy was running around the apartment or whatever they lived, and the mother, Rose, was interested in becoming pregnant and didn't become pregnant immediately, and sort of blamed it on my father because he thought maybe the father, that the husband was being taken away from his purpose of producing a child because of his own 3-year-old. So she asked that the 3-year-old be taken away. So he was sent to some relative up at some farm in New York State.
Wow.
And then they procreated. I don't know when he actually went back to be a member of the family, but that's what happened, and because I remember them.
What about on your mom's side?
On my mother's side, the father was coming over on the boat separately after my mother and her mother and their 4 sisters, there were 5 altogether, the other 4 sisters came with the mother, and the father never showed up. We have no idea what happened. All kinds of stories, you know.
What year was this?
What year? Around 1911. So he never showed up. So they came to this country with nobody. Fortunately, my mother had an uncle, this I.B. Miller individual, who very enterprisingly started this business and became fairly wealthy and was able to help them. And so he set up like a little store, an outdoor store, and they sold cigarettes and things like that. It's 39th Street in New York City. And that's the way they sort of made a little living. The mother never really got over the fact that her husband never showed and was not really that active an individual. My mother sort of took over because she was the oldest daughter. And that's what happened. They were helped with the uncle in this way. And of course, eventually they all grew up.
Yeah, yeah. Now, where did you guys go to high school?
There were 2 high schools in Union City. He went to one, I went to the other, and we were rivals on Thanksgiving Day.
Now, you knew him since you were 10 years old.
Yeah.
When did you guys start dating?
Well, what happened, he finished earlier than I did, half a year earlier. And he was already working. He had worked for a long part of his life. His parents were not wealthy. They lived in an apartment house 6 floors up, no telephone, et cetera, et cetera. And he was standing on a corner after he finished working at Peerless Relief every day. He would stand on a corner, wait for a trolley car to go. He would go to college at night. He got a scholarship to go to college. He took an exam. He didn't even know where he was going. And it turned out that that college was a Catholic college, the night school called Hudson College of St. Peter's, which was still exists. So he was going there in Jersey City every day waiting for a trolley car, and I would pass him every day. Coming home from high school, I would pass him every day. I never said hello because people would think that you were trying to start a relationship, so you couldn't say hello. And one day, after passing him, I don't know how many times, one day I said to myself, you know what? You don't have to worry about saying hello. You have a boyfriend in high school. Don't worry. They're not going to think anything because you already have a boyfriend. So one day I said hello. He went home to his friend, Robert Lowenstein, and he said, guess who said hello to me today? We just spoke to Robert yesterday. And so Robert called up my mother. My mother knew everybody, was friendly. Everybody knew her. She'd walk along Bergen Line Avenue, the main street of Union City. Everybody knew her. And so Robert called up my mother and said, Mrs. Datesman, I'd like to bring my friend over some afternoon when is a good time. So he set it up with her, brought him along. I came home from high school one day, and they were in my kitchen, the two of them, with my mother. So that was sort of a reintroduction. And then we went to services. His mother was a religious woman. The parents were not. They did not have a kosher home, etc. But the grandmother was very interested in his going to Hebrew school and laying tefillin, etc. And brought him a set. And he promised his grandmother that he would lay tefillin every morning, which he does to this day. And she was a very special lady. Anyway, she went to shul with the uncle. And so one time we were there for high holiday services, and a friend of mine came over to me and said, Ruthie, you got to do me a favor. I said, what favor? She said, I have a date with Norman Schiller, and I have the feeling that he's fast. And so I don't want to go out with him alone. Would you and Wally come with us? Then I don't have to worry. I'd do my friend a favor, right? So I called him up and I said, would you do Betty Fetterman a favor?
I ate that story up, hook, line, and sinker.
I guess that was I guess we were 17 at the time.
Yeah. Now, shortly thereafter, right after high school, I take it, World War II broke out. What are you guys thinking? Your kids? He's going to be going.
He enlisted, and he wanted to be in the Air Force. And he asked his mother, and his mother said, okay, what could she say? So since he had to prepare for a lot of different tests, if he wanted to be in the Air Force, she started grading carrots for him so that he would get a lot of vitamin A, which would help him pass the test. And he passed, and he decided he wanted to be a pilot, and it took about a year of training for him to become a pilot. And at the age of 19, he was flying over Germany as a first pilot of B-17.
What was your scariest moment out there?
I was in charge of the airplane. I had a crew of originally of 10 people, and they took one of the crewmen away during my first year as a first pilot. And it was a big responsibility. I was not only responsible for the airplane, but for the lives of my crewmen. Well, we were at war. And every day my job was to take the plane and bomb a city and then bring the crew back. And I was 19 years old. I did my job. Had good people looking after me, and nobody on my crew was ever wounded or injured. Every mission, we came home with holes in the plane. That was never a question. There are two kinds of attacks that we were subject to. One was fighter planes
Right?
from Germany, and the other was anti-aircraft fire. The anti-aircraft fire, the sky was always black around the plane as you were going down the target run. The plane would always come back with holes in it. That was never a question.
How many missions did you fly?
37.
37?
I should tell you that the B-17 was why it was considered a very essential aircraft in the war, because its sides were built so that it was resistant. It got holes in it, but the holes never got any farther than the outside.
Yeah.
His engine, right in front of him, number 3 engine, was hit and died, so that he didn't have one engine. There were 4 engines in the plane, so this was one out. And it was when he was coming back from a mission. And ordinarily, you're supposed to stick together. There were 12 planes in a group, and you have to stick together, and that's protection. Because of the loss of the one engine, he was not able to keep up with the group. Therefore, he was going much more slowly and became a target. One plane alone. Messerschmitt come and so that was dangerous, but out of nowhere, a P-51 came alongside him and talked to him and said, I'm so-and-so, I'm gonna stay with you as long as I can until I run out of fuel, and that'll probably take you to the English Channel. I'll stay with you until then. And that's what protected him.
Did he ever happen to have contact with those people anytime after the war?
Just by chance, we found out and then continued the relationship. His radio operator, turned out, lived in Fort Worth. And my daughter at the time lived in Dallas, Texas. So when we found that out, not too many years ago, we called him up and said, we intend to come to Dallas, so-and-so and so-and-so. We'd love to meet up with you, et cetera. And we have had a relationship since, I think it's about 9 or 10 years now.
And that was the radio operator on his plane?
On his plane.
How did you stay in contact with him during the war?
I was writing to not only him, but a lot of different guys who were overseas, and that was considered the thing to do.
Yeah.
In other words, this was the way they felt that the guys who could be in contact with home, speak to people from the home and writing, and it would take their minds off whatever the war. And it was a very, very important thing.
Now, you guys didn't get married until after the war, though. Okay, Wally comes home. What happens?
Well, for one thing, he had gained a lot of weight. He was like over almost 200 pounds. And my mother, without my knowing it, invited him for a Passover after he was home. And it was a big surprise to me, but he was so fat. It was almost over. And I always looked at guys' ankles, and if the ankles were swollen, that turned me off. That was when I saw him really almost for the first time after he came home. But he was assigned, after he finished overseas, he was assigned to various places here in the States. He was teaching What were you teaching? What kind of flying was it called? I forgot. Instrument flying. He was teaching instrument flying, different installations here in the States. And he was
I'd be
having a good,
17.
he was having a good time. I mean, you know, he started to drink and stuff like that, which he hadn't done at
So
all.
how'd you straighten him out?
And he just sort of straightened himself out.
And when did you guys get married?
In 1947.
Okay, and Wally went on to become an attorney.
First, the GI Bill was a tremendous thing, not only for him, but for lots and lots and lots
Sure.
of veterans. A wonderful thing. He had to finish college. He had only finished like 1.5 years. So he went back to school, and there's an interesting story. I told you about the school that he was going to in Jersey City, and in the middle of a semester, the Monsignor came into the class and said, "We can't run this school anymore because we don't have enough students." He said, "But there's a school very close by who said they were willing to take you." He said, "And I'm going to tell you how to get there. Take a bus to Journal Square, take from Journal Square, take this train, and you'll land at 8th Street, New York City, and right there's a school called New York University." So on that basis, he was able to transfer to New York University because of his school shutting down. And he graduated and went there. After the war, he was able to go to school on the GI Bill during the day.
Right.
So he finished in a short time.
Now, were you working at this time?
I'm a physical therapist by profession, and I finished college in the summer of '44. I went more rapidly. I went 2 summers, so I would finish undergraduate, and then I worked for a year. I did a lot of laboratory work,
what school?
medical. I graduated from Syracuse University. And I took a pre-med program. And then I worked for a year as head of a blood bank, et cetera, et cetera. He graduated magna cum laude from NYU. And he said to me then, he had been working as an accountant and bookkeeper at many different places. In that part of New Jersey, it was a big embroidery business. And he had been working as a bookkeeper and accountant for many of these embroidery places. This is the work he did after school. So he said, "You know what? I don't want to be an accountant. I would like to go to law school, if that's all right with you." I said, "Look, you have the opportunity. I mean, it's wonderful. Why not?" So he applied to 2 schools. He knew he wanted to go to a school where he would try to get a job because of going to that school. So he applied to 2 law schools. One was Columbia and one was Harvard. Columbia was using at the time, a pre-law test, and Harvard was not. Because of the fact that he had been mostly business and some liberal arts, not reversed, he didn't pass that pre-law test at Columbia. Harvard, they didn't have it. They didn't trust that test yet. They thought that it was not a good enough example of what you might do in law school after you took that test. So he got into Harvard and graduated from Harvard cum laude. Very good student. In the meantime, we had already married.
Magna cum laude.
Magna cum laude from NYU, and then cum laude from Harvard Law. So back to me, the profession of physical therapy just began in that period, 1946, 45, 46, because of the war. People were guys who had spinal cord injuries, stayed alive because they used penicillin for the open wound. In the previous wars, they didn't have that. therefore they died. But here, all of these veterans then were paraplegics. So that was one reason they needed physical therapy. They needed rehabilitation. The other reason was polio epidemic. 44, 45, 46, 51 polio epidemics. And they needed people to work there. So my sister saw an advertisement in the newspaper, a little clipping that said that if you're interested in trying to pass an exam to get a scholarship for the National Foundation, you can apply. So she brought my attention to that. I wrote them. I got a scholarship to study physical therapy. It was really something that, as it turned out, was very, very not only important, but that it fit very well into my personality and, you know, being able to help people, talk to people in person to person and stimulate them, motivate them.
So where did you guys settle down?
Well, what we went, first thing we did is go up to, go to school,
Right.
and there were two choices. One, to stay in a hotel with an electric heater, period, sort of a seedy place, not in Cambridge, very close to school, or go 36 miles away in the boondocks attached to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, where they had hospital corridors chopped up and made into living quarters. And we chose the latter. It was outdoors. We loved the outdoors. It was cold. It required a daily drive
We
for
then
him.
got married.
So he had a group of guys that he went to school with every day a different car. And he learned a lot during those automobile rides because one guy,
Carpool.
say who the people were. Well, only one was law school. The others were, one was majoring in classical Greek and Latin.
Right, peachy.
Peachy, right. Then there was a guy who was majoring in economics toward a PhD. And then there was a guy who was at the Harvard Business School. And then there was another law student like you.
I learned more in that carpool than I did in class,
Yeah.
etc. Because these guys were all top of the class
Right.
guys and very outspoken.
Right.
So where did you become an attorney?
One day he was going to the New York firms, and he went to this firm called Strucken Levan, which was a very old law firm. I don't know if you ever heard of Struck Woolens. Anyway, it's from Poughkeepsie, and one of their sons, Alan Struck, Saul Struck was his father, who was the head of this clothing manufacturing, very famous Struck Woolens. And Alan became an attorney and started this firm. And Levan was somebody that he went into partnership with, whose former name was Levine. He became a Unitarian. Anyway, he went to this firm downtown New York. And he went in, and this lady said, "Oh, don't bother taking out any of the materials. We're not hiring. And, you know, sorry, don't even leave your stuff because we're not hiring now." So he started walking back, you know, through their big corridor and onto the elevator, and he hears, "Psst," and he looks up and he sees another lady, and he walks over to him. He says, "I just came out from a meeting with the hiring partner, and we are hiring somebody who has a tax background. If you qualify, why don't you come now and get interviewed?" So he took his stuff, and because of a lot of accounting that he had, he certainly was qualified as a tax attorney. But as it turned out, that's not what he did. He was hired, and he worked there 44 years. So
What brought you to Dallas?
he had a heart episode in New Jersey. We're bird watchers. And we were in Cape May, New Jersey, bird watching. And in the middle of the night, he got up and he said, "I can't breathe." So he had cardiac failure, congestive heart failure it's called. So he was on a long period of rehabilitation, getting better. They had to stick this terrible monstrosity down his throat to keep him breathing. And you have to get rid of that in 6 days, otherwise you have to wear it for the rest of your life, which is no life. Anyway, very fortunate he landed in Atlantic City, which is a regional hospital, very good hospital. And the respiratory therapist there said, "I'm going to take a chance. After the 6th day, I'm going to try to remove this. Hopefully he can breathe on his own." And that's what happened. He was able to breathe on his own, which was very fortuitous. And then slowly, we built him up. He went from one rehab place to the other, every time getting closer to home.
So how did he get you down here?
Well, my daughter was living, we have 3 kids, as I mentioned, one daughter living in here. My son lives in Israel. Very unfortunately, my oldest daughter, who herself is a physician, got multiple sclerosis. So she couldn't be of no help. And the one from Dallas kept on visiting, and then she said, "I just can't do this anymore." She has her own business, has her own family, et cetera, very active.
So here you are.
Her name is Kogut.
Now, you had one brother, one sister. He was an only child. Did he get along with your brother and sister?
Yeah, my brother liked him very, very much. And my brother's 8 years older than I. My sister, 13 years older. So my sister was sort of, almost like, not a mother actually,
Yeah.
but sort of a different generation.
Well,
and he
well-
got along very well with my brother-in-law, my sister's husband. Not very many people got along with him, but he did.
What was the happiest time in your life?
What?
Me.
That was for her. but-
She's still smiling.
We love the outdoors. We've been all over the world on trips.
We love each other too.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we've really been very, very fortunate that way.
Made a good living. Got a bunch of good children. A bunch of great-grandchildren. Got 13 in number.
Including
And I'm doing great. My whole life has been great. We've got a wonderful relationship. We do everything together. We got magnificent children, great children, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, you have the 3 kids, 10 grandkids, 3 great-grandkids.
Right.
What advice do you have for the next generation?
Live it.
Good advice. Do you have some advice, Ruth?
I think have a little more commitment. Know where you
What
are.
does that mean?
It means that you put yourself in a situation and say, what matter is it that I'm here now? And you live accordingly. Try to make a difference. And I think that gives you meaning. It gives your whole life meaning. It may be sort of an aggrandizement, but not really. It just puts you more that your life has possibly made a difference. In other words, your living matters. Your having lived matters.
Tell me of your involvement in the Jewish community.
Okay, I can't tell you how many different, I can tell you how many different organizations that I was the president of. I was very active in National Council of Jewish Women, which my mother also was a member of way, way back in their early days. It's an organization which has always made a difference in the community in which they are. I was president of that organization, but also they do a lot of community service. The particular section I belonged to had 19 different social service groups that went out into the community and did stuff. Two of these I was involved in, and actually, because of my physical therapy, I was able to provide special activities for them to be involved in. One was called post-mastectomy program. It was a program where women who had the removal of breast, and remember very early they would remove the entire breast, which meant that a person was very debilitated in terms of arm movements. And so we started this program, which was a rehab program for women, came free of charge, got my services as a physical therapist free of charge, and had also the ability to go into the water and have help, myself and other people helping them in the water, which was part of the rehab process, plus a psychologist who met with them weekly to talk out their problems, mentally, emotionally, etc. That lasted as long as the community needed it, till they started their own groups. We did that for like 15 years in Bergen County, plus impacted on Hudson County and other adjoining counties. And the second program was called Swimmin'. First we called it Swimmin' for the Handicapped, and that was for MS people, having nothing to do with the fact that my daughter had MS. I'd started it much before. And that was we went together with the MS Society of the area and provided socialization. They went into the water. If they swam, they could swim, or we did exercises or whatever they needed. We had 35 volunteers coming. Almost, well, I would say at least 20 of them would come every week. And they would socialize, they would do the exercises with these individuals. That program is still going today. We started it in 1976, and I am proud to say that I have people who have taken over for me. I have a physical therapist there, and I have people who really run the program, and we received many commendations. I got a big award at the National MS Society just 2 years ago. And it's a still running program, and the original people's children are now being volunteers in the program. After they finish their careers and retire, they come and are volunteers in that program. Well, plus, I was president of AJC, American Jewish Committee, for my area. And those are the two main groups, but I was also on the national committees for AJC and NCJW. I go to shul every Saturday, all of our lives, both of us, attend study groups, et cetera, et cetera. And I've been very, very active in Judaism. And my kids, proud to say that every one of my kids married Jewish. So far, my grandkids marry Jewish.
I knew how to pick a wife.